on violas, snails, oak trees, and the right to roam. What inspires you? What makes your heart sing? What makes you want to take a leap and leave solid ground, if only just for a wee moment? For the years I've been working in academia, or for that matter, in the numerous years I was engaged in clinical mental health work, I can't really remember having been asked such questions. Life can be seen as a quest for knowledge. Through exploring, failing, and hopefully learning to fail better, we try to develop knowledge about ourselves, others, and the worlds in which we all roam about and are entangled with. If you look into the Oxford Dictionary, the verb to explore is defined as to travel through an unfamiliar area in order to learn about it. Definitions in the Oxford Dictionary seldom make my heart sing. I suspect this is also the case for others. However, this definition has a kind of heart-singing potential. The idea of traveling through unfamiliar land to learn about it is inspiring. It is an idea filled with possibilities and becomings. It is about opening your mind and body to the unknown, packing a small backpack with whatever you might need, and then your travel begins. What would be important to bring? Food and drink, perhaps, to keep your energy up? Perhaps a map? One good thing about maps is that they show you the possible paths and roads. They can give you direction and suggestions for where to go. It is up to you, however, to decide on your choice of path. You may even choose to be a little bit crazy and go outside the marked paths, to be an explorer in unfamiliar areas in the wilderness. I picture open landscapes, landscapes that are not yet explored, landscapes that are not fenced in, and that are potentially accessible, even though there might be certain hindrances. Landscapes that breed. Landscapes that, in the encounters with me and my stories of the present, the past, and imagined futures, are giving you possible meanings, as am I. In my mind, these open and unfamiliar landscapes invite a right to roam. In Norway, where I come from, we have a statutory right to roam in nature. The Norwegian Environment Agency states that, for centuries, we have been free to roam in the countryside, in woodlands and meadows, on rivers and lakes, amidst coastal islets and mountain summits, no matter who owns the land. While we are free to forage for saltwater fish, berries, mushrooms, or flowers, we come away not only with the fruits of nature, but with our own memories and experiences. I have this dream that some of this right to roam could also apply in academia and in understandings of how knowledge may be developed. However, the land of the academy can at times be experienced as rather hostile, with barbed wire fences, strict borders, and landowners who decides who has the right to enter the land, and who sets the rules of how one should behave there. These rules may be spoken and unspoken. They regulate and set the limits for whether or how we are actually free to explore the land of the academy and to forge for ways of thinking and understanding. It sets limits for what is recognized as knowledge and for our possibilities to come away not only with tangible fruits, but also with memories and experiences that may be used to build knowledge and, furthermore, to build people. I like stories. Stories can tell us something. They can build knowledge and they can build people. The best thing about stories is that every story holds numerous possibilities. Here is a story. Her grandfather was a humble man, a man of few words, but no one could express affection better. He belonged to the forest, the fishing lakes, and the flowers of the meadows, and also to her. They had a special bond. The little things and the little words were their domain. He used to call her the little flower girl. She loved to pick all kinds of wildflowers that covered the meadows and roadsides in her neighborhood. Pink, yellow, purple, and blue. The smells, the shapes, a world of senses, a world of fairy tales. Some flowers were like little stars, others had the shapes of bells or even trumpets. Twinkle, twinkle, ding, ding, and the names: forest star, bluebell, buttercup, forget-me-not. Every flower held possible little stories, worlds of ancient times and imagined futures. She was thrilled when her grandfather took her to the graveyard to attend to what must have been the grave of her great-grandparents. There were so many beautiful flowers there, all kinds of bright colors. There were roses, geranium, and daisies. She was eager to pick some and bring a little bouquet back home to her grandmother. "Oh, no, you can't pick these," her grandfather said. "These are not wildflowers, you see. Someone planted them there, and thus the flowers belong to them." The little girl was disappointed. After all, no one was there to enjoy the beautiful flowers. They just stood there in all their colors and brightness, neatly fenced in with little rocks, almost like a small miniature garden in front of each gravestone. She swallowed her disappointment and roamed around in the graveyard while her grandfather carefully weeded the grave of her great-grandparents. And then, there it was, a little flower, small and clear blue like the sky on a summer evening. It grew outside the miniature, well-groomed flower beds, outside those little fences, like a solitary, gentle, and yet insisting and promising glimpse of the sky, half hidden in the grass. "Grandfather, grandfather, look at what I found." "How? That is a wildflower. Now that one you can pick." "No one owns that one." "You know its name?" "It's a viola." The little girl found it to be the most beautiful flower of them all. She has carried an image of that viola with her ever since. She's not a little girl anymore, but she still feels a spark in her heart when she sees a viola. Sometimes beautiful or inspiring things can be found hidden in the grass where you don't expect to find them. They are not immediately seen or heard things, and yet, if overlooked in favor of the instantly more sparkling, eye-catching, or loud, important experiences can escape us. The Academy is filled with words. Words are currency. We are word dealers. Speaking words, writing words, counting words. Should we care about what can be counted or what we believe counts? Words can sometimes be too much. They can be insisting and pondering and make me want to escape, to find places where I can breathe. I believe that just being in nature can provide for access to a world beyond words, for experiencing what may not be measurable, and to sense the value of experiences that do not necessarily count. In his book, Life's Philosophy, the Norwegian philosopher Arne Næss describes how nature can provide for what he refers to as attentiveness, in addition to activeness. While activeness is related to activities and using nature as a means of being in activity, attentiveness is more about taking a step back. It is related to dwelling and being attentive to oneself and the environment, rather than being in movement and focusing outward. Næss was known as a treasured and inspiring lecturer who encouraged his students to think and feel beyond the normative understandings of knowledge and science. In an interview with Næss, published in 2004, he describes the following experiences of dwelling. "When I was in California, I went with some graduate students to an extremely beautiful place in New Mexico. We set up camp after dark in the morning, and in the morning we came together and I said, for 60 minutes, no words, just see where you are. They found that very strange. I tried to influence them by looking around at the water over there, etc. I bent down, looking at an organism, a small snail, and after a few minutes, they came down and said, 'What are you looking at?' And I said, 'Shh.' They were talking, asking about what we should do, and I tried to convey them that any such being is worth not just half a minute of their time, but half an hour." How is attentiveness and dwelling valued in academia? Does it count? Do we give attention to violas and snails? Do we give them the time they are worth? In our recently published Routledge book, An Autoethnography of Becoming a Qualitative Researcher, Alec Grant and I worked on Jay Griffiths' concepts of wild time and tame time. Griffiths describes wild time as limitless and unfenced, transgressive, playful, risky, creative, and artistic. Tame time, in contrast, is the form of time favored by the corporate academy. It is commodified, having money as its alter ego and its bottom line. Tame time aligns well with a neoliberal logic. It is the servant of the neoliberal. In the universities, academics are socialized to manage their time in the interest of working harder in increasingly enterprising ways. They are socialized into focusing on whatever can be counted. In our book, Alec describes that the point of the neoliberal university, and I quote, is to sell knowledge as commodified information and qualifications, in environments where excellence takes on a new meaning, relating more to business expediency than scholarly work. Knowledge and people are always entangled with time and space, both in proximate and more remote and abstract terms. However, when we talk about research and the generating of knowledge, what is seldom discussed is how time and space influence and sets premises for how and what kinds of knowledge that can be developed. If time is focused, it is in terms of tame time. It is about efficiency, about counting, finding answers and truths as quickly and most efficiently as possible, and to sell the product to the world in commodified terms and concepts. Knowledge is developed and valued within a tyranny of the present and accountable. Where does this notion that efficiency is the most feasible way of developing knowledge come from? That countable knowledge is what counts? That value is measured through short-term gain? I have this fascination for large and old trees. Oak trees can live for hundreds of years. In my neighborhood, there are several of them. They were there long before me, long before my grandfather. As silent and majestic spectators, they have witnessed historical events. They have witnessed changes in the everyday life of people. How we move faster and faster, how we become more and more efficient to save time and to produce more. Perhaps they wonder how we are going to use all this time that we save and how much we need to produce before we are actually satisfied. While we run, write, and talk at increasing speed, they just stand there in majestic tranquility. They are incarnations of stability and endurance, with roots stretching back to a past long gone, and if left untouched, they will grow into a future that goes far beyond our lifespan. I like walking. I often walk in my neighborhood area. Lately, I have been more and more struck by how mankind is chewing on and digesting the local nature in the purpose of growth and expansion. I see excavators munching the wildflowers, the untouched and scruffy landscapes. They have ugly, grinning teeth. They are noisy and they are smelly. Trees are felled, little hills are blasted out with dynamite, leaving hollow and hungry craters in the ground. The craters are then used to provide space for neat, sterile houses and well-groomed gardens without a single bump. The houses all look the same, the gardens as well. I doubt if they have room for violets or little snails. This feeling of sorrow, of being disconnected. Who are we if we only exist in and live for the present? I sometimes imagine that the large and wise oak trees shake their heavy crowns, frowning slightly at us. They know something we don't know, or that we may have forgotten. In a recent published anthology, Julia Nordblad writes about the time of the forest and the time of the market, pointing out how the transgenerational temporality of the forest will often be in conflict with human short-term desires and the time of the market. What would the academy look like if we consider using the time of the forest as a possible temporal model for valuing knowledge and ways of developing it? What kind of research would we do? How would we teach students, and how would we collaborate and relate to one another and to nature and our material surroundings? What is considered useful and good use of time in a short-term perspective might be rather pointless in a longer time span. On the other hand, dwelling, wasting time, and developing slow knowledge might turn out important. You never know. I believe that the right to roam may be best performed at the pace of the forest. I am, of course, not only talking about the right to roam in nature, but also in the academy. With the time for dwelling, for being attentive, and for taking in. With a culture that recognizes the importance of inputs and the time to reflect on those, and not only on measurable so-called outputs. In terms of what I have just said, I would also state that roaming and nature in the academy are connected, meaning that these ways of roaming can mutually inspire one another. Might we say that roaming could be considered to be a way of life? As a way of life, a way of relating to others, to knowledge, to nature, and the non-human worlds, a right to roam also comes with certain responsibilities. In short, it comes down to taking proper account of the interests of others and of the features of the land. It is about respect and not doing harm, and of being attentive to the time of the forest, and hence also paying respect to that and those who belong to the future. I find it tremendously demanding to assert a right to roam, in life and in the academy. Equally, I find it hard to focus on the value and importance of the time of the forest. I so often find myself caught up in neoliberally managed chores and time management. I can also find myself feeling content and satisfied when receiving recognition from the counting game system. Publications in scientific journals? Check, well done. Applying for external funding? Receiving funding? Check, well done. Keep going like this, and you may be rewarded a full professorship in a few years. Check, check, check. Am I much different than my neighborhood excavator? Do I notice a snail anymore? The viola? I fear that I am in danger of losing what inspires me and what makes my heart sing. Back in 2017, when I completed my PhD, which was about mental health service users' experiences with helpful help in mental health crisis, but which also chronicled my own journey of becoming a qualitative researcher, I was proud. I felt that this was what I was meant to do. At my Viva celebration, my husband read part of the lyrics of a Swedish song for me. In English, it goes something like this. Arm yourself with wings. Arm yourself with song. Arm yourself with all that you once longed for and dreamed of. I sometimes fear that I may be losing my wings, that I am on the edge of not only being chewed and digested by the neoliberal excavators and by the time of the market, but that I may also be at risk of becoming a self-consuming excavator. Writing about it helps. Talking about it helps. Talking and writing are ways of becoming aware of what we are thinking about. Talking and writing are also ways of inviting others into my stories and ways of perceiving things. It is an invitation to trouble and develop stories together. Encounters with friendly, supportive, but also challenging others can serve the purpose of a hatch being open, allowing for fresh air and light to come in. It suits my feeling of suffocating, a grasp in the air being offered. I feel that I can breathe again. Inviting others in can also support resistance towards being swallowed by a neoliberal counting game. This resistance also involves recognizing the time of the forest and wild time functioning as valuable in the development of knowledge and of people. Of recognizing that what may be considered having immediate value and that quenches a thirst for academic success and outputs might turn out to have little value and endurance in the longer run. I strive to be an oak tree, but I cannot make it on my own. Neoliberal understanding and time management on the one side and the time of the forest on the other side may be perceived as different paradigms. They are paradigms in terms of providing frameworks for our basic assumptions and ways of thinking. The neoliberal time paradigm and the time of the forest paradigm are not exactly a match made in heaven. In terms of roaming, I would say that the first would see roaming as an activity that needs to be managed in order to be productive. The latter would perhaps suggest that roaming has a value of its own, and that, like on a snail, it is worth our time. We cannot predict how much time something should take, what is worth spending time on, and what the possible outputs might be. Outputs understood as end measures stand in contradiction to how knowledge and people develop. Knowledge and people develop in myriad and unique ways and contexts, in entanglement with time and space. The project is highly unpredictable. You cannot reliably predict how long it will take for an oak tree to reach a desirable size, or what the ultimate conditions to enable its growth will be. And that is perhaps part of the beauty of it. But how does one navigate and survive these potentially contradictory paradigms? I have talked about roaming and the importance for openness and possibilities to leave safe ground. However, in order to leave safe ground, you also need to have some safe ground. A takeoff from a rocking and unstable ground is bound to result in a crash and burn. And thus, there is always this balance and tension between being and becoming, between longing for a home and for leaving home. To survive and navigate this, what I would describe as paradigm squeeze, and to build an academic life while also preserving some kind of integrity, finding supportive groups and communities is vital. I can still very vividly remember my first autoethnographic conference back in 2017. What made the greatest impression on me was not the actual content or form of the various presentations, but the warm, supportive, and generous atmosphere. To me, it was a defining moment in my academic development. It was also a start of building precious friendships with others in the autoethnographic community. For seeking and offering community and friendship, for engaging in dialogues, we can share and carry traces of each other's stories and voices with us and develop new ones. Through sharing and offering each other wings, longings, dreams, and resistance, we can support and inspire each other to navigate and trouble paradigms. And who knows? Together we may even be able to nurture oak trees and to sow the seeds for enduring and mighty forests that will stand here long after we are all gone. Thank you.